Bernie Sanders has been taking some heat lately for the unification trip across the country, the 50-state tour that he's doing with DNC chair Tom Perez. I'm hearing a lot of backlash from progressives, and rightfully so. I guess I should, I do understand where they're coming from. When you have somebody like Bernie Sanders, who most progressives just, I mean, it's hard not to support Bernie Sanders, especially if you're progressive, because he always talks about, the most important things that we care about, better and affordable education, free education, Medicare for all, ending the wars abroad, and doing some infrastructure spending here, tying the minimum wage, raising the minimum wage, and then tying it to inflation. So every year inflation goes up, minimum wage incrementally goes up as well. I mean, these are the things that would really benefit American people. And Bernie Sanders, all he ever talks about is like 7 points, and he just pounds them over and over and over again. I mean, that's why he was so popular, is because he talked policy all the time. And it's the reason why Hillary lost. Because all she talked about was platitudes and I'm with her and stronger together. And she never said shit. All she said was just platitudes and just ego stroking for the DNC. And Bernie doesn't do that. He doesn't care about the way he looks. He comes in a rumpled suit. He combs his hair with a balloon. He's just an average working guy. He doesn't have lots of money. He doesn't, he drives a frickin' hybrid. He is the Progressive Party. So a lot of progressives are upset with him because he's going on this journey, this 50-state tour with Tom Perez, and I get it. I get why you're mad. But I want to defend him a little bit because I love Bernie Sanders. Maybe you might have some disagreements with some of the things that he has, but ultimately, this is getting him exposure. And maybe it's the point where he is dragging the DNC over to his side of things. The more exposure he gets, the more times he will get to say his 7 talking points, and the more states and rural communities that are going to get a chance to hear him. Now, Tom Perez will be right beside him, and he'll just be saying, Anyway, let me show you a video that Chris Hayes did with Tom Perez and Bernie Sanders, the one that everybody's getting so upset about, and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
Your relationship to the Democratic Party is an interesting one. You've sort of famously been an independent. You registered as a Democrat. You ran the primary. You went back to being
No, I didn't register. In Vermont, we don't, Chris, in Vermont, we don't have party registration.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What you do is take your ballot in the Democratic primary, which I do.
Right. So I guess my question to you is, you've been talking, you're on this road trip now with the head of the DNC. You're talking about reforming, reviving, transforming the Democratic Party. Do you consider yourself a Democrat?
No, I'm an independent, and I think if the Democratic Party is going to succeed, and I want to see it succeed, it's going to have to open its doors to independents who are there are probably more independents in this country than either Democrats or Republicans. And it's going to have to open its doors to working people and to young people and create a grassroots party. That's what we need. And what the party has got to focus on are the most important issues facing working people. That's the decline of the middle class. That's the need to take on the billionaire class and Wall Street and the insurance companies and bring people together, A, against Trump's absolutely reactionary agenda, and B, fight for a progressive agenda, which among other things includes a Medicare for all single-payer program.
Is the DNC on board with Medicare for all single-payer, Tom?
Well, we want to make sure that health care is a right. It's not a privilege. And that's why we fought for the Affordable Care Act. That's why we want to continue to expand it. We want to make sure that everybody, and the Affordable Care Act has made tremendous progress. We have more work to do. And I think the unity, Chris, that we've shown in the recent efforts by Trump to repeal the Affordable Care Act have been an energizing force for Democrats, independents, others who share the values of inclusion and opportunity. And health care is absolutely a right in this country, or should be. It shouldn't be a privilege. And obviously we believe that as Democrats. Republicans don't appear to believe that.
See, this is what's key to me. And Tom, I want to hear you talk about this, because when you talk about this, there's a bad guy there. There's a villain in the story. There are people that are doing wrong by the American people. Donald Trump has a story where he's got villains as well, and they're different folks. Sometimes they're corporations, mostly they're immigrants and other people. Do you see the world that way, Tom? Is that the Democratic message? Do you think it's important, as the senator sitting next to you just said, to say the ruling class, his words, of this country, are basically screwing average folks?
Well, listen, when we put hope on the ballot, Chris, we win. When we allow our opponents to put fear on the ballot, we don't do so well. I believe that an economy has to work for everyone to be...
Hillary Clinton, no, this is my point. Hillary Clinton ran on hope. She ran on hope. It was a very hopeful message. And the point is, do you have to name the enemy? That's my question. Do you have to say, these are the people that are screwing you?
Well, listen, I think you're creating a false choice, Chris. What we have to do as Democrats is to articulate very clearly that Donald Trump's vision for America is a vision for the top 1% of the 1%. It's a vision that's divisive. When he talks about the Make It in America executive order, if you turn over the sheet on that executive order, it probably says Made in China.
So right there, you heard the points I was just talking about, how Bernie Sanders just sticks to his policy points and that's it. Maybe he is naming the enemy. You don't have to blame Donald Trump specifically. He is just a symptom, but it's all of the people that back him, everything that's behind him. All Donald Trump ever talked about was how corrupt Hillary Clinton was and how corrupt Ted Cruz was. Both of them were very corrupt. But just mentioning Goldman Sachs over and over again. And Donald Trump has 4 of them on his staff, including Gary Cohn, who is the ex-CEO of Goldman Sachs, who walked out of there with a $250 million golden parachute. You don't think he's going to be doing Goldman Sachs any favors when they write tax plans and economic policy? Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. So you hear Bernie Sanders talking his points. And I have to give Chris Hayes a little bit of credit. I don't usually give him a lot of credit, but I'll give him a little credit on this one, because when Tom Perez talked about, he asked him, how do you feel about Medicare for all? It's just a yes or a no question. And immediately Tom Perez just comes up out of his mouth with, when we put hope on the ballot. I feel breakfast coming up. And Chris Hayes called him on it. He says Hillary Clinton ran hope on the ballot in her election, and she lost handedly to Donald Trump, the most unelectable, least liked, short-armed, tiny hand, comb-over, muskrat wearing. Is it a golden, what are those things, a Yorkie? He's got a Yorkie on his head. Every once in a while you just see it move. It can't just sit in the same position all the time. It's got to adjust a little bit. Anyway, so I get it that progressives were upset because he's standing beside him, but on the same token, he is getting to say his stuff, Bernie Sanders, over and over and over again. Maybe it'll drag the DNC over. I don't think it ever will, because those guys have moneyed interest. That includes Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and that whole elitist group of DNC money-making machines. And Tom Perez is right there. The very first day that he took office in the DNC, they voted to, again, continue to take corporate money. And I hate to use the word litmus test because everybody gets really upset about it. But if there was ever going to be a litmus test for Democrats, it should be whether or not you take corporate money. I mean, Bernie Sanders went around, he proved it. He went from obscurity, nobody knew who the hell he was, to 45% of the Democratic vote in the primary against Hillary Clinton without any help from the major mainstream news organizations. You remember the empty podium they had the camera on. CNN had the camera on for Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders is talking to 20,000 people. They didn't put a camera on him at all. So they didn't give him any help. Nobody wanted Bernie Sanders in there, but he still pulled 45% of the Democratic vote. Just imagine if he'd just gotten a little bit more coverage on the news, how much better he could have done. So I understand why you're upset. I get it. But he is getting a chance to push his message. And he is still the most popular politician in the country. 61% approval rating. That is mind-blowing. Donald Trump is at 35%. Hillary Clinton is at 33%. I believe the RNC is at 35 and the DNC is like 29. Everybody hates the DNC. And I believe Congress is something like 17% approval rating. So, first is Bernie Sanders at 61. Planned Parenthood is at like 56% approval rating. So everybody loves Bernie Sanders. Nobody's got anything bad to say about him except, oh, he's a socialist. He's a social democrat. Okay? He's an independent, but he ran on the ballot as a Democrat. He caucuses with the Democrats. He's doing nothing but helping the Democrats. Whether or not he's going to pull him kicking and screaming into the progressive side, or we come up with a new party, a progressive party, and we what's the word I'm looking for? We draft Bernie into it. Whatever the case is, I think Bernie Sanders is a good-hearted man, and he is trying to get his message across, and he's doing everything he can to make the DNC palatable. And I think that's why the progressives are upset, because he's not siding with Tom Perez. He's just trying to give them a hand and educate them. So before you go off the handle and get upset at Bernie because you betrayed me, come on, you delicate snowflakes, man. I'm not telling you to get on the DNC side because I am not on the DNC side. Go to justicedemocrats.com. That is an amazing, it's an amazing site. They're doing a wonderful things without taking any corporate money. That should be the litmus test. I mean, I am down for all of the things that Bernie Sanders says, from Medicare for all and better education and cheaper and free education, free college. I'm down for all of those things. But the first thing should be no corporate money. And you know what? If you're a Democrat and you take corporate money, you're just as bad as Republicans. And that right there is my litmus test. And if you do take corporate money, you're done. We're voting you out. We're going to primary your ass, and you're going to be gone. Hey, this is Antoinette from Transistor Rodeo. If you like what you saw here, please subscribe for more videos and content, and you can follow me on Twitter at Transistor Rodeo.